Okay, so my name is Katie Martin. I'm the Ag and Natural Resources Educator here in Bartow County. Today we'll be talking about feeding seaweed to cattle and how that reduces methane production in cattle. Um, So I incorporated these two pictures just to get us thinking because normally whenever we think about seaweed, we don't think about cattle. So this first picture here is from a Chick-fil-A commercial a while back. With their slogan, Eat More Chicken. And then I want to incorporate this picture here of the cows on the beach just to think cows, beach, seaweed production. So the way I come up with this topic was whenever I listened to the Cows on the Planet podcast and the one on how much do cattle contribute to climate change, Dr. Karen was talking about feeding seaweed to cattle to reduce methane production to the atmosphere. So I thought that was a really cool topic. Started doing some research on it. A lot of research hasn't been done here in the United States, but it's been done. A lot of people in Canada feed seaweed and other countries. So, whenever you think about the term seaweed, what exactly do you think about? Whenever I think of seaweed, I think of sushi. I think about a seaweed salad. I think about seaweed snacks. I've actually tried these. They don't really have a lot of flavor. Or you just think about the beach and how whenever we go to the beach, we're worried if there's going to be seaweed so we can enjoy our vacation. Different things like that. So, seaweed harvested around the world. There's around 35 million tons of seaweed that is harvested a year. In 2019, the United States, they harvested around 3,400 tons. And then our main state here in the United States to harvest the most seaweed is Maine. So use of seaweed in ag. So a lot of people use this as a feed additive or a fertilizer on their pasture, their garden, different things like that. So this is just some pictures I pulled off the web. So this is your fertilizer. So there is commercial seaweed that you could use as a fertilizer. Or this is the feeds down here. And so there's kelp feed. And so what they will do is they will harvest the seaweed and then they'll actually grind it into like a finer dust material to be used in feed or as a mineral supplement. So methane production in cattle. So the cow is going to ingest the feed stuff that they are eating, whether that be grass, hay, different things like that. So it will go into their mouth, and then it will go into the GI tract. That goes down to the rumen. So here in the rumen, you have fungi, protozoa, bacteria, microbes. So whenever that feed stuff enters the rumen, it will be attacked by these materials. And then this is where the methane is being formed at. So the methane is either going to be excreted by waste, the animal waste, and into the environment, but most of it will be burped up by the cow, and that is where the methane will go into the atmosphere at. So this is a chart that I found online, just talking about methane production and which animals contribute the most to the methane production. So at 55%, it's the beef cows. At 18%, it's the dairy cows. 11% buffaloes. 7% sheep. 5% goats. 1% camels. And then we have a little 3% of others. So that would be our horses. Llamas, different things like that. So how does seaweed lower methane production? So there's something in there called bromoform, and so that is going to inhibit an enzyme in that GI tract to stop the formation of methane. And then once that inhibits the formation of methane, that's going to allow other bacteria to grow that does not produce methane. And a lot of the studies that I found research on, it showed that it reduced methane by 10 to 45%, whether that be, so there's three different seaweeds that we'll talk about today. We'll talk about red seaweed, brown seaweed, and green seaweed. So it just ranged by which seaweed you feed, so it reduced the methane production by 10 to 45%. So these are just some nutrients found in seaweed. So you have potassium, sodium, calcium, phosphorus, zinc, copper, manganese, iron, cobalt, selenium, and iodine. This isn't all the nutrients found in it, but this is just a few. So the first seaweed that we'll talk about is our red seaweed. So there's around 6,100 species of red seaweed. And they did a study with dairy cows and they were feeding it the red seaweed. Also with other materials, you only feed the seaweed in low amounts. So it reduced the methane production by 12% in that herd. Also, they found out it did not affect the milk production or the quality of meat of that cow. The only drawback to this is it cannot be grown in cold climates. Also, this has the most protein content out of the three seaweeds. And also, there's more amino acids available in this red seaweed. So this is what our red seaweed looks like. Our second seaweed that we're going to talk about is our green seaweed. There's around 2,200 species. There's not a big difference between the brown and red seaweed. They're low in fat and high in protein. So this one is in the middle of the two seaweeds for the amount of protein. This is what our green seaweed looks like washed up on the shore. So our brown seaweed, there's around 1,800 species. A lot of people use this for their fertilizer. This one is lower in protein compared to the green and the red seaweed. And a lot of people make Tasco paper out of this and feed it to their cows. So over here, you can see exactly what is found in the brown seaweed. So your crude fiber percentage is around 6. Your crude protein is around 6 also. It has the minerals in this, and then also the amino acids. So there's this one that has the least right here would be your tyrosine and then also your methionine. So that's our lowest two amino acids there. So that's something to take in consideration. This is what our brown seaweed looks like washed up on the banks or the shoreline. So how do they harvest this? So a lot of times they will have a rope and then the seaweed will start growing on the rope. Just so all they have to do is pull the rope up and then it will go onto this boat and then the rope will go up and then it runs through and it will harvest the seaweed for you. We could also put on some waders and you can see the rope here. That is why it's in a line here. So you can go out there and harvest it by hand. Or you can have this heavy machinery that actually goes around and there's a conveyor belt that actually pulls the seaweed up and harvests it that way. Then you will take it to land. So the last thing I will leave you with, this is just some studies done in the United States. In March 2022, the California Department of Food and Agriculture approved one of the most effective red seaweeds for cattle as a digestive aid on the basis that no negative effect was observed on animal health or milk production. There, like I said earlier, there's not a lot of research done in the United States with seaweed and feeding it to cattle. Our seaweed production here is lower than a lot of other countries. China's one of the #1 producers in seaweed. Something else to take in consideration. So whenever we're thinking about transportation, so I live here in Bartow County, which is in Northwest Georgia. So say I wanted to feed seaweed, I'm not close to the coast, so how would that transportation cost look? How much is that going to cost to transport it up? If we buy it online through the bags, it would be cheaper that way. And a lot of research that I looked at, it was mainly used for mineral supplements here.